All right, it's another Monday. We're hanging out here in Portland, Oregon at Guardian Games in the Southeast on Taylor Street. We're Portland Paper. I'm Travis Cooper, hanging out with disc golf extraordinaire, distance champion,
Ian Lunger.
and we're watching a matchup here in round number 1 out of 4 of, drum roll please, Enzo on grinding, 4-color grinding breach, and up. Our opponent is Alex Smith on 5-color creativity.
Oh, I gotta switch him.
Gotta switch him. Starting it off with a bang here.
It's been a bit since Travis and I have shared the booth, and there's, you gotta shake off the rust.
Looks like we got a mulligan here for Enzo. Enzo's been helping us out, doing some editing, doing some commentary lately. It's nice. Got a couple different teams that have been hanging out in the booth.
Who do you like in this matchup, Travis?
I don't quite know that. I feel like Enzo always uses like a little bit of a variant on like maybe what a net deck would be, but I think combo, like it's a pretty resilient combo deck, and I feel like that's going to be decent against creativity as long as you have some interaction, because one Archon coming down isn't going to be the worst thing in the world for you, especially when you're playing a card like Underworld Breach, and then creativity is probably just going to be on some number of like spell pierces as interaction. So yeah, definitely kind of think grinding breach has a slight advantage here. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree. I think it really depends on how you're able to leverage your Archons, how early you're able to play one or multiple Archons. I have found the matchup to be challenging from the creativity side in that, yeah, just getting one Archon out usually just leaves you vulnerable to get comboed out.
And I feel like you can't ever really creativity just on one token. You have to wait to creativity for 2 because these breach decks play a fair amount of instant speed removal, so you don't want to just get blown out there. So it does, your combo plan is slowed down, and then the Archon isn't necessarily just lights out. All right, looks like we picked up a Mox Amber there, so I think we make it a Psy coming down. Oh, wow. Huh, that's curious. Not a Psy, sorry, Emery coming down, but didn't play that. Holding up, perhaps holding up some interaction here. Are making a token.
Alex looks like we have lots of lands in hand. At least one Archon, it looks like, stuck in hand as well.
And usually I think the token game plan for Grinding Breach is something you do against more sort of like control-y decks here, but Enzo is an experienced pilot with the deck, so feels like maybe we're just going to try to get aggressive with some attacks here.
Yeah, I think if you can kind of distract your opponent, that's kind of when the Grinding Breach deck is at its best. So you really do want to kind of use a lot of your resources, just kind of running your opponent around. Honestly, both decks feel kind of similar in that way, that you're just going to kind of like trade a bunch of resources early, run each other around, and then eventually when both players are kind of low on resources, that's usually when you're going for your combo. Unless, your opponent just gives you kind of a wide open opportunity. Yeah, so Enzo really going the value plan. There is a Mox Amber and a Spell Bomb in hand, so we can make a construct, get the Springleaf Drum, deploy the Amber and the Spell Bomb, and have a fairly sizable construct.
Yeah, you also then might just get an Archon or 2 coming in the next turn, though. So because we're going to get the Goblin attack to generate a treasure
Okay, so
token.
Enzo ultimately ends up not going for
Yeah.
that second construct, which makes some sense if you are nervous about your opponent combo killing you here.
Yeah, it feels like you kind of want to hold up at least a bluff of some interaction, I think, or to be able to play the spell bomb.
I'm inclined to agree, but thought Enzo was going on the line of making the construct, and I think if you do go on that line, you might as well maximize it.
You can play the Emery here.
So interaction is an unholy heat for Enzo. So even if we miss on this iteration, we still have the ability to cast that. We also have the spell bomb, so kind of the ability, if Enzo hits the land here, which it looks like we do, should be able to heat the Fable token and then possibly bounce bounce a dwarf token if that's in fact what Alex Smith goes for. But I can't imagine Alex Smith is going to try and. Oh, interesting. Enzo's just saying.
Well, you get
Feel
the
free
Mox
to-
Amber for the spell bomb when you play
Oh,
the
good
Emery,
point.
so
Yes.
it makes sense, maximizing the amount of cards you're playing.
Yep. So Enzo's actually established a pretty solid board here. Can immediately start recurring Mishra's Baubles with the Emery. Alex is able to bin a dead Archon. But it looks like we pick up more lands. Alex is very flush on lands this game.
So is the 5-color creativity deck playing any amount of persist at this point?
It really depends on the list. I've seen all over the place from 0 to 4 copies. I guess I have not seen 4 copies in the 5-color list. So I guess maybe between 0 and 2. You tend to play somewhat similar, especially early in the game anyway, with the kind of aggressively binning your Archons.
I got a Bolt here. Might want to pick up that, or pick off. There you go. My words. That Emery while you can before it is able to get an activation.
Yeah, you should feel moderately safe here as Alex. It does take, if it's an empty board, it takes at least 5 mana total to go off. So, you know, I suppose Enzo's last cards could be land. I mean, we see they're not, but if Alex is worried, Enzo could combo off if the last 2 cards were exactly Grinding Station, Underworld Breach.
Right. So Enzo really trying to prevent Alex from having targets for that combo and sacrifices the spell bomb to bounce the dwarf token. If Enzo's doing that and I'm Alex, I'm feeling pretty alright about the situation.
Yeah, and now we can see why, because Enzo wanted to be able to get in with this Ragavan. So, of course, leaving the dwarf on the field would be ill-advised. So Enzo has picked up the Grinding Station. So we are just a breach away at this point. But a breach away can feel like a very long distance when you are playing the grinding breach deck, as a lot of the rest of your draws can feel somewhat inconsequential. It's a deck that, truthfully, it's actually playing a lot of air, so you don't really oftentimes feel good when you're in the position that Enzo's in, where you're in the breach waiting room, because you do not have a ton of cantrips to get you there.
Kind of like iteration or breach are the things that matter at this point.
Yeah, you always feel a lot stronger playing the Grinding Breach deck if you're sitting on a breach in hand in your opener. It makes a huge difference if you can play it that way rather than having to kind of rely on eventually drawing into one.
All right, an iteration for Alex. Definitely don't want the Archon. Like that is on the bottom. And do we want another? All right.
Binding's interesting here. You can tax Enzo's mana if you want to toss it on the grinding station. It's very likely that Enzo would just mill with the station, and eventually you'll be able to bounce that back to your hand with Teferi. Depending on what else Alex has in hand, I think it's reasonable to make that play.
I mean, eventually, yes.
It's a little awkward and also good for Enzo that Ragavan is in hand, as it does make this binding look much worse if Alex does intend on trying to remove the Ragavan. Although I imagine that a block with the reflection is probably in order if you don't have a way of taking the Ragavan off the board.
I think Alex is considering playing another Fable, in debating whether that or if it's worth leyline binding the grinding station. I think it's kind of worth binding the grinding station because that sort of like Enzo needs some more pieces. It can't just top deck a breach.
Right. And I suppose Alex can even just fetch another dwarf token to block the Ragavan.
Thinking about it, but yeah, station seems the way to go.
Yep. 3. Okay, Enzo probably happy to not see a breach among that stack.
I'm fine with not drawing Mox Amber.
Yeah, just another land there. So
Yeah.
it's land and Ragavan.
Not what you want to see if you're on Enzo's side. Your kind of chances to win this game just kind of every turn that goes by, they're decreasing.
And Alex doesn't know it, but you know the window is open here for doing things without any kind of interaction from Enzo. Do you like holding on to the Ragavan if you're Enzo instead of casting it?
Yeah, I think you want to. You don't want to just give Alex kind of a free window to deal with it, especially with all the cards in hand. So I do think that that's reasonable, although I think we're going to see Enzo lose it here, as I feel like we're going to see a transmogrify into reflection, copy, Archon. Okay, interesting. All right, so Alex is continuing to play it slow here. If we want, we can use the reflection to copy this Fable token, swing, and get a treasure here. I imagine that that's okay. Interesting. So just keeping the Fable back. I'm a little surprised to not see a little bit more aggression out of Alex. I don't really see a way in Alex's hands of dealing with the breach. So I feel like you definitely want to get Enzo dead, as, you know, breach off the top with enough mana from Enzo is just kind of game unless you've got some premium interaction, because creature-based interaction is not very good against just continually casting Emery, as the fact that it just mills 4 cards.
Yeah, I mean, breach is game over here because Enzo has another land in hand, so it's just, you know, breach, grinding station.
Picks up the Thassa's Oracle.
That's not great.
I'm waiting to draw, you know, anything.
Well, what are you worried about? I mean,
Enzo's still a big fan of the Thassa's Oracle over Grapeshot Giganta. I've kind of always felt like, personally, I'm much bigger into Grapeshot Giganta for when you get in these situations and just kind of need things to do with your mana. I think both that Grapeshot is more useful in this situation, and that having the ability to cast Giganta, given the number of games I've won with that card, is significant in my mind. But Enzo has a lot of more experience with this deck than I do, and I'm sure has won a lot of games off the back of Thassa's Oracle.
Pitch some lands, drew some lands.
I really think that is a Transmogrify in hand, but
I can't quite see, but I'm not sure why, if you have it and you have to ferry out.
Yeah, that's definitely Transmogrify.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just so surprised we haven't seen Transmogrify copy with the Teferi out. We're playing very, very conservatively.
Because, I mean, the thing Enzo could maybe have is, like, Odawara, but then that you're still fine.
Right. Yeah. I think it's okay to trade for that. Enzo just can't hit here. Take a look. Still keeping that breeding pool in hand.
Maybe trying to, well, not worth
I think the thought
disguising the green, perhaps.
Yeah, I think maybe there was some thought for that. There was some thought that if Alex does go for Archon, then you've got some free discards if you want to try and keep the Ragavan in your hand. Oh, another Hollowed Fountain. Enzo's just, the deck has not been kind to Enzo this game thus far, and probably won't make it to the next. So Enzo basically needs to draw something here, as Alex can just copy Fable copy each other to make enough, or Reflection copy each other to get enough tokens to just win next turn, regardless of whether we decide to go for the Archon plan here. I would like to see Alex go for, with the Teferi up, I'd like to see us just go for Archon.
Because that's lethal, right?
Yeah, Archon copy Archon is easy lethal here. Okay, Enzo scoops him up.
Reach was the top card, so sad. If I may ask, what was in your hand that that turn I fetched with the Flooded Strand? Remember?
Fetch with the Flooded Strand. I had like 3 lands. Yeah, I drew an exorbitant amount of lands.
I drew it. I was going nothing. You also drew 2 Fables though, so.
And I just drew another Teferi, but I mean, it really wasn't a whole lot.
Yeah, I needed.
So Alex takes game 1 off the back of not the strongest showings from either deck, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like not the best draws from either deck, but also it felt like both players were playing a little bit cautious as well. And yeah, see what the sideboard options are.
And it's got to make a decision here with the kind of like trying to decide, do we take Hex Parasite out? It's so good against Leyline Binding, but otherwise it's, I mean, I guess it gets rid of Fable. So probably keep it. Looks like we're keeping Hex Parasite in. Enzo had a lot of cards that we were looking at bringing in, but the cuts can be really difficult in this deck.
Hex Parasite or the Might?
Excuse me, Haywire and Might. Thank you, Travis. Yeah.
I mean, I was like, wow.
I get my bugs mixed up.
Hex Parasite's some interesting tech.
Yeah, because there's a lot of good cards to bring in. 3 Spell Pierce, 2 Hollowed Moonlight, both fantastic in the match. You can't really cut lands here. You could think about cutting bolts or heats. I think at least trimming a few of your targeted removal spells. It feels bad, but Enzo is on the Emery version of the deck, so playing Engineered Explosives is actually quite good against what Alex has going on.
I kind of like putting in Elish Norn if I'm Alex.
You like the Norn for what purpose?
How does Enzo win if Alex has an Elish Norn out?
Oh, you just recast the spell bomb, bounce it, and then play the Oracle. Yeah.
But the Oracle's not going to trigger.
You just bounce. You recast the spell bomb
right,
first,
right.
bounce
Okay,
the
gotcha.
Elish Norn, and then yeah. There's enough like tricksy things that you can play out of the graveyard with the Breach deck that I find permanent based hate that doesn't like stop the player from going off. Period. Tends to not be quite what you're looking for.
Are you seeing any persist in Alex's deck as we're flipping through?
That's a good question, Trav. If he's playing Transmogrify, I've seen lists with like 1 Transmogrify, 1 persist, but if you're playing Transmogrify, it usually means you're not super hyped on persist.
I'm always curious, like, when people are playing white index and you don't really care about your graveyard. Why is Rest in Peace like not in the sideboard?
Because Wrenn and 6 is just such a powerful card. It's the main. That's the main reason. I think if Wrenn wasn't such an important part of the deck's game plan, that would be like absolutely reasonable. Kind of used to be when creativity was like Jeskai, when there wasn't such an emphasis on Wrenn being like such a big value engine in the deck. But
yeah, it feels like now it's more about the dwarf tokens and less about getting some crabs out there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Like
very
all-
interesting to see hard evidence just kind of like completely removed from the deck and kind of replaced by just more removal spells, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like core of the creativity deck is just like really good mid-range cards at this point. So there's no real reason to play like bad cards on their own.
Right.
Because you're like the cost for having like things that make tokens in your deck is pretty low. Like Dwarven Mine is the only like kind of maybe bad card, but it's not even really that bad. It like
Right.
blocks, you can fetch to block a Dash Ragavan or something. So yeah, all your other cards that make tokens are just like good cards. So.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like secretly the printing of, or maybe not so secretly, the printing of Fable the Mirror Breaker was just kind of a game changer completely for this deck. I think it's like, it literally is everything the deck wants. It's a token maker. It also makes a creature that's, you know, not a creature when it flips. It can copy Archons. It loots extra lands out of your hand. It's just like every part of that buffalo is incredibly impactful in this creativity deck.
All right, I think we see a breach in Enzo's hand. Bobble, breach, lands. Ragavan, maybe? Seems fine.
I'll keep 2.
Monkey to start. I always love putting my opponent to the test like this, especially on a deck like Creativity that, you know, you're going to have kind of a range of keeps, many of which may not necessarily have a turn 1 removal spell.
It's been a while since I played a Ragavan, but it feels like maybe the meta is like slightly more favorable to the decks playing Ragavan now, like a little bit like less like 1 mana removal that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, when people skimp on their monkey hate, it's very easy when you're the creativity player to remember why you played the crabs when you don't have them. So Enzo does not have a piece of counter magic here. So Ragavan is a sitting duck to the possible Renin 6 here. Although it looks like there's another one in hand. So do we have a Renin 6? No. Or yes? Yes. All right, so get the Ren down tick. Ragavan's gone, but Enzo has another one. Again, a lot of this is just looks like, yeah. Oh, it looks like no. Okay, we've got 2 Ragavans in hand for Enzo. So a lot of this is just going to be kind of running Alex around while we try and draw a grinding station. Bunch of monkey smoke and mirrors.
Don't really think Alex has much except for lands and like a wear tear and 1 creativity.
Yeah, it always feels like it is nice to have both the Saga and the Breach covered, but yeah, sometimes when this grinding station deck, like it has an okay fair plan if you're not doing a whole lot. Usually something like Fable is kind of what saves the creativity deck in these situations where like that as a fair plan is just enough to kind of outdo a good number of other decks' fair plans. Imagine we'll see Enzo somewhat happy to trade one of these Ragavans for the Fable token, or maybe we'll see the Spell Bomb into swing. Kind of like the Spell Bomb into Dash Ragavan.
Had
the spell bomb, man. I don't know.
I mean, it's pretty good in this matchup,
bounce
though.
it.
Yeah. The creativity deck does take a good amount of damage from their own lands. Oh, there's the Elishnorn. Okay, so it did come in.
Oh man, that would have been bad for me.
It would have been pretty good for me, I agree. There you go.
So I like the chip damage plan from Enzo. Did he draw another? No, okay. Still just the 2 Ragavans.
Yeah, Ragavan, Springleaf Drum, and
the Breach.
Yeah.
tapped out except for one treasure. Alex does have the creativity. This is kind of that moment where you think, does Enzo have it? I think if you're really heads up, you definitely know that there's a decent chance that Enzo shaved some removal spells. Is this stream not coming in at 1080p? It is at 720. You know what, chat? We're in the 21st century, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the stream. We'll wait till this match ends, chat, and then I'm gonna stop the stream, and we're gonna put it back up to 1080. I'm not sure if that was by virtue of worry about the internet situation that it got changed, but I'll put it back up to 1080 after this. We'll do after this game.
And Alex decided not to go for it.
Gosh.
Unsurprisingly, Enzo is just going to continue dashing the Ragavan. That is a very cool Aether Ghost.
And dash again.
Swing.
It's Enzo is like really wanting to bait out this dwarf because I don't think Enzo has anything really left over.
I'd recommend you get a win.
Yeah. I think, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't when you're on Enzo's side at that point. Like, you do want to get the dwarf out of there, but you're not super happy about that trade either. Now we're in the grinding station waiting room on Enzo's side. The fair breach plan looks like pretty medium right now. I think it's like unlikely that Enzo can go fair breach route and then have a decent chance of winning. I think he'll have to feel like backs against the wall before we see him consider that as the route to victory. And Alex is faced with a decision again. So creativity for 2, I think, is reasonable here. And that's what we're going to see. Does pass the Spell Pierce test. There's 1 Archon. And we get to see, did Alex board in anything that is not an Archon in this matchup?
We saw 1 Elish Norn.
Oh, good point. Yeah, I actually think it's kind of a blessing for Alex that Elish Norn got removed. I really do think that 2 Archons is much, much more powerful.
I believe you, based on what I've seen.
Yeah.
Gonna get
Drawing 3 Ragavan's is
both cards out of Enzo's hand.
So we pitch the drum and a land.
So neither Travis and I did any pre-releases, but we did check out that there was a recent Modern 20K that had some mom cards in it for Modern. So there's a couple cards showing up in Modern.
just like 1 draw that was
Anybody in chat excited to brew around any particular new addition to Modern?
Can you breach and kill both of these Archons?
breach.
Okay.
Not the draw, I already have that. Spell bomb.
So this breach into spell bomb. So it looks like we're going to be bouncing
Spell bomb.
both Archons, which is not nothing.
No cards in. Here you go.
No.
I think I need an Emry. If I had drew an Emry there, I could have won.
Galton Mavrin. We'll take a look at we've got some time in the break if this match ends really fast. Like I said, the stream's going to go down for a moment when I switch us back to 1080p. But when we come back, if we've got some time, we'll take a look at some new cards and talk through what people are excited about. I have a feeling that we're going to see Alex close this out.
Emry.
Okay. So that's a solid draw for Enzo. Like, that's a start. Still a bobble in the yard. So if Alex can't remove the Emery,
You show me creativity off.
Enzo says if you show me creativity, he'll concede. But you know, you got to show that there's still an Archon too.
You're at 7.
Shuffling up some tokens.
So it's 9 off the creativity, and I have the shock as demons.
Probably gonna bin. I imagine we're gonna bin both maybe Archon and a land. Maybe we do keep one in hand at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as I can't imagine we want to bin the Wear Tear here over one of the Archons. It looks like we're looking at binning the Wear Tear. That feels like a card. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Oh, that's 2 bolts.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just lethal if we swing and Enzo doesn't block, which I imagine is going to be okay. Interesting. I think I would have just gone for the swing. I mean, Enzo probably doesn't block there, right? If you just go for the swing and then you just
You're bluffing having a Wren and 6 at that point.
bull pull.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't, a lot of ways to a win for Alex here, and we've got the breach potentially covered with the Wear Tear, but it could have been good to think about that line. And we're hard casting an Archon. And I have to imagine.
I'll kill the shaman.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got the heat here.
One's got 1 turn.
It keeps Enzo alive, yeah. And Enzo's sitting on 5 mana, so not breach. Yeah. Breach might have been able to keep Enzo in that.